Why can't the West and their media mind their business? Why must they have an opinion about African affairs? I mean, they've got so many things to deal with in their respective countries. But for some reason, meddling in other people's affairs is their favorite job. Recently, pictures and videos of massive military firepower were seen in Mali. Before anyone knows it, Western media has circulated the internet with all kinds of speculation, creating a false narrative about the military leader of Mali. In this video, we are going to analyze some of the speculations and reveal the reason why African countries prefer to relate with Russia. On January 17, 2025, images broadcast by the Malian television station revealed a convoy of over 100 vehicles containing massive military firepower arriving in the country. Half the vehicles in the convoy were trucks, including armored Kamaz trucks and engineering vehicles, and the remainder included T-72B3M tanks, BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, BTR-82A 8x8 armored personnel carriers, Spartak, Linza, and Tiger 4x4 armored personnel carriers. Also seen were 3 D-30 towed artillery pieces, 2 anti-aircraft cannons, and a couple of boats. Now, 2 days later, on January 19th, Colonel Assimi Goïta, in a speech, noted that his administration is pushing hard to establish a national defense industry, including plans for weapons manufacturing, light tactical vehicle assembly, and the production of ammunition and explosives. For some reason, he did not mention the convoy of military firepower that entered the country. Now, instead of the West minding its business, it has begun to speculate about where the equipment came from, as if Mali could not have bought them. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense was among the first to release a statement. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, the markings on the equipment H-220 indicate that equipment had at one point been transported by rail, possibly in Russia. The statement also added that, today, Russia has deployed Wagner PMC units in Mali, which became more active after the French military left the country in 2022. The French armed forces operated in Mali as part of Operations Serval and Barkhane from 2013 to 2022 and countered illegal military groups, including ISIS, which were trying to seize power. Currently, the local indigenous population, supported by Western countries, is confronting Russian mercenaries and the pro-Russian Malian government. Most likely, the equipment will be distributed between the Wagner PMC units and government forces as part of strengthening the counteraction to paramilitary units in the country and terrorist organizations. We will come back to this statement, but this is not the only speculation that has been circulating the internet. According to Western media, it is possible that the equipment may have come from Syria following the departure of Russian troops after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. You see, in November 2024, a coalition of Syrian rebels mounted several offensives with the intention of ousting Assad. On 8 December, as rebel troops first entered Damascus, Assad fled to Moscow and was granted political asylum by Russia, which subsequently began withdrawing large amounts of military hardware and troops from Syria, diverting some to Libya. It's not exactly clear how the connection was made, as there is no evidence of this. But these Western analysts concluded that some of the military hardware taken by Russia from Syria was the ones that arrived in Mali on January 17th. They have also speculated that the equipment is intended for use by Russian-backed paramilitary forces rather than by the Malian armed forces. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. The delivery of the weapons has also been reinforced in the minds of these analysts based on previous reports about ongoing construction at Bamako's Base 101. Satellite images taken in October 2024, analyzed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, revealed the construction of several large buildings capable of housing hundreds of soldiers and storing military equipment. The implied conclusion is that the West thinks that Russia wants to set up a military base in Mali, and that is something they do not want. After all, Russia is supposedly evil. Right now, it's not clear whether any of this is true. But if it is true, how exactly does it concern them? When France and the US set up bases in these countries, spreading their military presence across the continent, they did so with the agreement of the African countries. When Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, as well as Chad and Senegal, kicked out French forces, they did so as independent sovereign countries. Our point is that Mali is a sovereign country, and if Captain Assimi Goïta believes that Russia can help him fight the insecurity that France could not fight, then he has every right to make that decision because he is the leader of the country. When Western leaders make decisions, African leaders do not scrutinize their decisions. So, Ukraine and the West should leave Mali and focus on fighting their wars. As President Paul Kagame said in a recent interview, every African leader should develop a thick skin and refuse to follow the dictates of the West. He noted that most times following the dictates of the West would land the African country in a mess, and the same West would either blast the African country or propose another solution that would create even more mess. So, it is up to African leaders to make decisions that they believe are right for them. The West believes that Russia and China are the greatest evil in the world, and that's their business. The leaders of the Sahel, however, have embraced Russia and strengthened diplomatic ties with Russia. If you think about it critically, it makes sense. The West has been Africa's traditional partner since independence but has nothing to show for it. Mali, for instance, partnered with France to combat its insecurity far back in 2013. France launched and operated Operation Barkhane for 10 years in Mali. From Mali, France spread its military wings across the Sahel. Yet, despite its advanced intelligence and military equipment, France could not help to improve the capability of the Malian army, and neither could it eliminate the insecurity. It would have been madness for Mali to continue to partner with France. It is said that it is insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. The same thing happened in Niger. The US had one of its most expensive bases located in Niger. The bases was supposedly there for counterterrorism. However, the civilian government of Niger signed a ridiculous defense agreement with the US that had no benefit for Niger. First, it forced Niger to pay bills related to taxes on the American military. Secondly, Niger was not aware of the number of US civilian and military personnel on its soil or the amount of equipment deployed or information gathered about the terrorist. And third, the US military was under no obligation to respond to any request for help against militants. This means if Niger called for help in its fight against the terrorists, the US had every right to refuse to help. So, of what use was the US military cooperation with Niger? Now, just like France, the presence of the US did not change the security situation. How can the greatest military power in the world be present in a place, and yet insecurity and terrorism have not been reduced, but have persisted and even increased? What has their so-called surveillance on the terrorists done to help the fight against terrorism in Niger? Again, the answer is nothing. The fact is the US base was only there to make sure the terrorists don't spill past the Sahel into the West, show its military might, be ready in case West Africa decides to do something against the West, and gather information about West African countries. What this means is that the US military was not in any way beneficial to Niger, a concept that the West has failed to understand. When the three Sahel nations kicked France and the US out of their countries, Western analysts stated that these countries would crumble under the weight of the insecurity. They said that the insurgents would be emboldened to wreak more havoc. But what is happening now? Yes, the insurgents have launched several attacks killing soldiers and civilians alike. However, these countries have held their ground. They are fighting back and have gained significant victories. This is all thanks to the fact that the military leaders upgraded and outfitted the military by partnering with Russia, Turkey, and Iran for their defense needs. This is something they could not do when they partnered with the West. So, tell me, how is the West better than Russia? Now let's talk about the ridiculous statement made by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense about the equipment that arrived in Mali. The ministry said, "Today, Russia has deployed Wagner PMC units in Mali, which became more active after the French military left the country in 2022. The French armed forces operated in Mali as part of Operation Serval and Barkhane from 2013 to 2022 and countered illegal military groups, including ISIS, which were trying to seize power. Currently, the local indigenous population, supported by Western countries, is confronting Russian mercenaries and the pro-Russian Malian government. Most likely, the equipment will be distributed between the Wagner PMC units and government forces as part of strengthening the counteraction to paramilitary units in the country and terrorist organizations." The first statement says Russia has deployed Wagner PMC units in Mali, which became more active after the French military left the country in 2022. Well, this is correct, except for the fact that France was kicked out, a fact that President Macron has denied. If you recall, in a trending statement he made earlier this month, President Macron said that France was not sent packing out of the Sahel countries. Rather, France left by itself because it wants to reorganize its African policy. Well, Macron can say whatever he wants, but he is clearly delusional and just wants to save face. Everybody knows France was kicked out. The next statement says that the French army operated in Mali as part of Operation Serval and Burkina from 2013 to 2022 and countered illegal military groups, including ISIS, which were trying to seize power. Well, this is correct again, except for the fact that the French army did not counter any jihadist group. If it did, the insecurity situation would not be the way it is now. It is on record that not only did France not achieve anything, but France's presence also worsened the insecurity. The insecurity started in 2012. France came in 2013 when it was still in its early stages. Yet under France's presence, the situation worsened with the terrorists spreading over and taking over half of Mali's territory. This was until they were kicked out and Mali, with the help of Russia, started gaining victory and reclaiming its territory. Moving on, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense said that the local indigenous population, supported by Western countries, is confronting Russian mercenaries and the pro-Russian Malian government. This is absolutely ridiculous, and it is a lie. The citizens of Mali are anti-French and anti-West. They fully supported the decisions of the Malian military government to sack France and partner with Russia. Mali and the people of the Sahel love Russia. The West says Russia is fond of promoting lies and propaganda against it, but is that not the exact thing that Ukraine is doing? For some reason, the West feels that the citizens of Africa are stupid and do not have a mind of their own. But Africans are one of the most intelligent people. They are very much aware of the hypocrisy of the West. Besides this, Ukraine should not think that Malians have forgotten what happened a few months ago. If you recall, the Tuareg rebels, who have been causing chaos and insecurity in Mali since 2012, launched a heavy attack on Mali's military, which led to the death of at least 84 Russian mercenaries and 47 Malian soldiers over 3 days of fighting. Now, while the nation was still reeling from the losses suffered, the spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence agency, Andriy Yusov, told the public broadcaster Suspilny that the Malian rebels had received all the information they needed, which allowed them to carry out their operation against the Russian war criminals. In fact, he categorically said, the rebels received the necessary information they needed that allowed them to conduct a successful operation. To make matters worse, after the attack, the Tuareg rebels published an appeal to Ukrainians. They expressed solidarity with Ukraine in the fight against Russia and offered to hand over the captured mercenaries of the PMC Wagner. Now, if you put all these together, the first question that comes to mind is, how did the authorities in Ukraine know that the Tuareg rebels received the necessary information needed to launch the attack? Secondly, why did the Tuareg rebels express solidarity with Ukraine in the fight against Russia? The answer to these two questions is obvious. Ukraine is responsible for providing the information to the Tuareg rebels. There is no other explanation for it. Of course, the Ukrainian authorities denied the accusations, but their flimsy denial was not sufficient to appease the authorities in Mali and even Niger. And not surprisingly, Mali as well as Niger cut off diplomatic relations with Ukraine, citing support for terrorist groups as their reason. Despite this, Ukraine is suddenly feigning concern for the people of Mali. So hypocritical. Africans are not blind. Africans know their allies and enemies. Any country that helps Africa genuinely is an ally, and any country that feigns help like the West is an enemy. The West can rage all it likes, but Russia is here to stay. Burkina Faso, like Mali, has also developed a budding relationship with Russia. On Tuesday, November 7th, 2024, the Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs of Burkina Faso, Kassoum Koulibaly, met with the Defense Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Shoigu, where they agreed to strengthen defense ties. Russia, which has grown more isolated since its war with Ukraine, has in recent months discussed greater military cooperation with Burkina Faso. According to the Russian defense minister, The Russian-Burkinabe relations are based solely on the principles of mutual respect and consideration of each other's interests, and in recent years, they have gained positive dynamics. The defense minister of Burkina Faso, Kassoum Koulibaly, hailed the undergoing negotiations with Russia and called them a real practical phase, while the defense minister of Russia stated that he considers the meeting to be another step in the development of friendly relations between the two countries. However, this is not the first meeting the two countries have had to discuss cooperation. On Thursday, August 31st, Burkina Faso welcomed a delegation from Russia in the capital city of Ouagadougou, and the interim president, Ibrahim Traoré, discussed possible military cooperation, among other issues. This visit, led by Russian Deputy Defense Minister Yunus Yevkurov, was a follow-up to talks between Traoré and Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg in July. Since the coup that brought Captain Ibrahim Traoré into power in September 2022, Burkina Faso has distanced itself from its historic partner and former colonial power, France, and moved to diversify its international partners. In particular, the country has moved closer to Russia. In fact, Ibrahim Traoré has reportedly called Russia a strategic ally. In October, Burkina Faso signed a deal with Russia for the construction of a nuclear power plant to increase the energy supply to the Sahel country, where less than a quarter of the population has access to electricity. Russia's state atomic energy agency Rosatom said in a statement that the memorandum is the first document in the field of the peaceful use of atomic energy between Russia and Burkina Faso. It also added that the agreement laid the foundations for cooperation in areas including the use of nuclear energy in industry, agriculture, and medicine. In addition, Moscow has also pledged to deliver free grain to Burkina Faso. This is a clear sign of a budding relationship between the two countries. Zimbabwe, DRC, and Cameroon are amongst other African countries that have chosen to ally with Russia despite Western sanctions imposed on them due to the Russian-Ukraine war. So why are African countries such as Burkina Faso choosing to ally with a rival of the West? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.